グローバルディベート Wisdom。
Japan is shrinking. Population began to decline from 2011. Especially in the rural areas that are in dire status. The pace of outflow of youth is accelerating. Survival of municipalities is at stake. Japan is suffering from a disease that may lead us to death. Last year in May, private sector experts warned that there is a danger of half of municipalities disappearing in 24 prefectures. However, on the other hand, young people from all over the nation gather in Tokyo, but due to intensification of competition, uncertainties over the livelihood is spreading. Fertility rate is 1.13, the lowest of all prefectures in Japan. This unipolar concentration of population in Tokyo is further exacerbating decline of total population. It is not only Japan that is faced with this issue. Many German municipalities are suffering from decline of local industry. In Republic of Korea, spread of inequality is inviting unipolar concentration of population in Seoul. Young people can't make ends meet, so they leave. Many countries are struggling from population decline. Can Japan overcome this conundrum? Sources of Global Wisdom will debate on the future of Japan, advanced nation of modern-day challenge. Global Debate Wisdom, Demise of Local, Impact of Population Decline. The rural areas are in the midst of crisis. Please take a look at the number of newborns since 1947 after World War II up to 2013. It used to be 2.7 million at its peak in 1949 and reduced to 1.03 in 2013, and the flash report of 2014 is approximately 1 million. And further, because of the migration of population to the rural areas, total population is declining more rapidly. It's not just Japan. Many countries are faced with the same problem. Korea and Germany are seeing migration of population from rural cities to the urban areas. But because this is a global problem, there are people who are paying attention to the trends in Japan. So today we are going to talk about how we can deal with the population of decline and the crisis that the rural cities are faced with the worldwide experts. 7,000 opinions have been collected from more than 10 countries and regions to our website, and we will be introducing to you the opinions that have come to our face page. Tweets are also invited while the program is on air, and please use this hashtag. Let us now introduce to you the foreign experts that will be participating in this debate. First, Mr. Nicholas Eberstadt, American Enterprise Institute, expert on political economy and demography. And from the Republic of Korea, Professor Kwang-Hee, Jeonnam University professor, an expert on depopulated farming, fishing, and mountain villages. And from the United States, Mr. Michael Schumann, economist and author, suggested the way for rural revitalization in his book, The Small Mart Revolution. And from Germany, Mayor of Altena, Dr. Andreas Holstein, a village faced with serious outflow of residents. And in the studio in Japan, Mr. Hiroya Masuda, former Minister of Internal Affairs and Communication and former Governor of Iwate, he chaired an experts panel that compiled a report on the rural economy crisis and population decline. Mr. Daisuke Tsuda, who's been covering many rural city-related stories and active on the internet. Thank you very much for coming. First, let's look at the actual facts with regards to population decline, Ms. Takigawa. Yes, the Japanese total population is approximately 127 million. It is expected to become below 100 million by 2050 and below 50 million in 2100 at around 49.6 million. And it is expected that population will decline in Korea and in Germany. So first, same question to all of you. What's so problematic about population decline for our societies? Do you think immediate action is required? First of all, from Germany, Dr. Andreas Holstein, mayor of Altena, a town suffering from decline of population.
We might lose social stability in our countries, and due to the fact that nearly all European countries have the same problem, and even Japan has these problems, we have to deal with this. And the fact is we have not enough women to stabilize the rate of birth. So we have to deal and to manage the shrinking of our countries and the shrinking of the rural areas especially.
Professor Kwang-Hee from Korea. It is said that Korea will begin to see decline of population, and the birth rate is even lower than Japan. So it is said that the Korean decline will become steeper. What's so problematic? In about 10 years, like Japan, Korea will begin to see decline of population. Many are concerned, but some are not concerned. If population begins to decline, there will be several problems. There will not be stable growth, and there's a concern that there will be negative growth because productive population will decline. That would lead to the problem of increased number of elderlies. But because those in the working age will decline, tax revenue will decline, and welfare expenses shall increase. And therefore, although pension benefit payout will increase, the tax revenue will decline, not being able to support the pension system. So Northeast Asia and Japan should become the role model in dealing with the low birth rate. And farmland, fishing villages, and mountainous villages population problem should be resolved so that we can show a model. So the situation is quite serious in Korea, too. Mr. Michael Schuman of the United States. What will population decline bring about to our society? What's most problematic about decline of population, Mr. Schuman?
Well, in addition to the things that my colleagues have said, which is fewer people means less production, less growth, fewer people also means less taxes to pay all of the social services, I think there is a more serious problem, especially in rural communities, when the entire infrastructure that you build for people is abandoned. So every community has a certain level of roads and electric utilities, water utilities, and when people leave those communities and all of that infrastructure is no longer able to be paid for, there is a sudden crisis for those who are left. So we want to make sure that if there's depopulation, it occurs very slowly and we were able to adjust for it. And I believe, and we'll get into this later, that this represents a crisis not just in terms of movement of people, but it's a crisis in how we approach economic development in rural communities.
And also from the United States, Mr. Eberstadt, do you think this is an urgent issue that requires immediate action?
Well, I've been following population problems for 40 years. 40 years ago, people were very worried about the world population explosion. The great growth of world population since then hasn't led to the immiseration people feared. I think conversely, the prospect of population decline may not be quite as scary as people think. Germany has had more deaths than births for over 40 years, but Germany is a lot more prosperous today than it was 40 years ago. With work and saving and innovation and flexibility, I think it is possible to have an increasingly prosperous but shrinking society. There is one big caveat for Japan, however, and this is the fragmentation of the family structure. The old-fashioned Asian family values thing is a matter of the past in Japan, and this means that many more people who will be aging are social isolates with no family support network. That, I think, is a big deal, and that is something that Japanese society must think about very carefully.
Mr. Eberstadt said that we shouldn't be so frightened about population decline, but for Japan in particular, we are faced with the issue of the elderly. But let's ask the two participants from Japan. Mr. Tsuda, when we listen to the experts, there are mainly economic concerns and concerns of the social security system. But how do you think, Mr. Tsuda? What's so problematic? Basically, I agree to everything that had been mentioned. But if I may add, it's not that decline of population in itself is an evil. Look at the Scandinavian countries. Per capita GDP is high, although the absolute population is low. The degree of happiness is high. That could be a model. And the population decline faced by Japan is not the population level that is problematic, but the increasing healthcare cost as well as the social security cost, which may lead to fiscal collapse. And therefore, the expenditure will have to become focused, and at the same time, the government will have to take policy to increase birth rate. But in order to do that, many aspects of the Japanese lifestyle will have to change. But we've not yet reached the stage where we can have a national debate. In election campaigns, politicians ought to raise that as an agenda, but we've not come that far. This will become one of the challenges going forward. Mr. Masuda, you served as the Minister of Internal Affairs and Communication, and you were also former governor. So in that perspective, when you think about the security issue, social security issue, as mentioned by Mr. Tsuda and foreign experts, what do you think is so problematic about population decline? In the case of Japan, the total population decline cannot be halted by any means. But the speed of decline is so high, and also the demographic structure is deformed, so much so that there is very few young people and overly high number of elderlies. In the case of Social Security, there would be difficulty in maintaining the pension system, and also because the workforce will shrink, economic growth will become difficult, and municipalities' fiscal situation will become deteriorated. So that may lead to collapse of the very fundamental infrastructure of our lives. Young people are gathering in Tokyo, and this problem is being exacerbated by this trend of migration of youth in Tokyo. I think that Seoul is somewhat similar, but we are the very few example in the world where there is such high concentration of people in just one hub. So the overconcentration of youth in Tokyo has also to be resolved. That makes it all the more difficult. We've been receiving a tweet that, yes, in Japan there is this unipolar concentration, but is it the case in other countries? But according to Mr. Masuda, that is seen in cities like Tokyo and Seoul. So, this is imposing even harsher impact in rural cities. So, let us look at the current status of rural cities of Japan and around the world. Ukejima Island of Kagoshima Prefecture. Farewell, goodbye, good luck. Last year, the very few remaining elementary and junior high school students all left this island with their families. Can't help it. It's really sad, but necessary for the children's future. There used to be more than 1,000 residents on this island, now only about 100, and none who are 20 or younger. This soybean paste factory had continued operations for 120 years in Niigata City. They have no debts, and last year profits had been recorded, but the management decided to close its plant. Shortage of labor, lack of successor, no prospects for the future. These situations led to the decision. We can't go against the tide of change. Even in Germany, some rural cities are beginning to see decline of population. In part of this industrial region is a town called Altena. The current population is almost half it used to be in 1970. All over the town, apartments and shops are being demolished. My heart aches with sadness. Even after demolition, there is no demand, no plans for new construction. This is a wire factory that's been closed. This town used to be a major production center for wires, but flooded by imports from emerging countries, there are no longer signs of prosperity. There used to be many companies in the past, but one after another, they left. Craftsmen left. The more educated the youth, the more likely they leave town. The income gap between urban cities and the rural cities is widening. On the east coast of Korea is a fishing village in the city of Samchok. There used to be 800 residents. Now it's gone down to 160. Average annual income of Samchok City is 2.9 million yen, which is about 3/4 of that of Seoul. Seeking high income, the youth leave for urban cities, and 60% of the residents are 60 or above. We're the last women divers. When we die, there will no longer be women divers in this town. The city tried to reinvigorate the local economy through tourism and planned the construction of a ropeway 2 years ago. But because of fiscal problems, the construction has been suspended. Frankly speaking, we've already done everything that can be done. Anyone is welcome, foreigners or Koreans. Please come, and please help us reinvigorate our town. So that's the current situation on rural areas in Japan and outside of Japan. Last year in May, a report that delivered a warning on this trend attracted much attention. Mr. Matsuda served as the chair of the panel that came up with a strategy to stop the decline of birth rate and to reinvigorate local economies. In 896 villages by 2040, women in the 20s and 30s will be reduced to less than half. The red shaded areas are regions where more than half of the total number of municipalities are following that trend. So in the rural areas, the situation is very serious. On the other hand, let's look at the total fertility rate. It is said that if the level of TFR is 2.1, the total population can be maintained. National average is 1.43, and the lowest prefecture is Tokyo at 1.13. Blue is the prefectures that are outperforming the national average, and dark blue is more than 1.5. According to this report, young people moving from the fertility high regions to fertility low Tokyo is further exacerbating population decline. So let's ask the author, Mr. Matsuda, if we halt this migration from the countryside to Tokyo, do you think that we can stop the population decline? Just simply stopping people coming to Tokyo will not solve the problem. It's not as simple. In addition, there has to be very good support with regards to women having babies and raising children, and also using local resources in order to develop new industries. Or in the case of Tokyo, many people are commuting for many hours to come to the office. And young people are very tired because of the long hours of commuting and long hours of work. So if the government wants to offer the policy to have families have children, it's easier to build childcare facilities in the rural areas than in Tokyo. It's easier to provide for such support in rural cities than in Tokyo. And at the same time, not moving the people to the rural areas, but to resolve those issues from the root, and the local economies have to take their initiatives by themselves. Professor Jun, do you think that we should stop people from moving from the rural areas? Be it Japan or Korea, I don't think we can prevent people from moving from the rural areas to the city, and it won't solve the problem either. But the flow of people from farm, fishing, and mountainous villages to the big cities, there is that flow. But similarly, we can create a flow from the big cities to the villages. How can we make use of those people who are willing to move to the villages so that the farming villages, fishing villages, or mountainous villages will not have to face a decline of population? Of course, that will require investment of fiscal resources. And other than major cities, are there any cities that are seeing increase of population? Many people came to the big cities that enjoyed economic growth. So we have to think of a way how we can transfer the economic growth to the rural cities. Dr. Holstein, mayor of Altena.